Hi guys, how are you? Type A here. And so this is going to be the first video in the Europa series, and this one is about the engines. Yeah, just as the intro video, this particular individual videos covering each section of Europa is going to be like really short videos in some basically going over the different controllers and explaining like pretty much how you can interact with some of them. But the purpose of this series is that like for you to get acquainted with how all of this works. So in other videos we're going to be creating sounds, actually creating sounds with it. So I guess these are the boring part. And yeah, so basically what I was talking about in the previous video is that Europa is a really amazing synthesizer. It's a wavetable synth, and it features three identical engines, which are like together they are each one is basically wavetable oscillator, two modifiers, a spectral filter, and harmonics processor, and unison control. And pretty much in any wavetable synthesizers you have your basic wavetables, and you're also able to import your own. So let me show you quickly how this is done. So basically if you are in Reason, you go to drag and drop, and if you're also using the BS2 version of Europa, you can also do it. Because I use this plugin inside FL Studio and Rhinos, and it works perfectly. So let me go to find some wavetables. Europa wavetables. This one, for instance, I made a video already on how to wavetable synth. Like using FM to create this wavetable, and you basically want to drag and drop this into the user wave tab here, this one up here, and you see that it instantly loads it. And go to the user wave or user wave if you want to switch between the two of these options. So user wave instantly access the waveform that we just load, and like if you scroll through the shape knob, well, like while using your MIDI keyboard or whatever, you can preview the sound. So yeah, it's a pretty cool like representation of the waveform we just imported, and this is basically one of the strong features that I see in this unit, that importing wavetables is really straightforward. You just need to there's no like mini features and editors and stuff that you need to mess around first in order to make the sound work. Of course, like not all of the audio that you're going to import is going to work well, but it's faster and it's more intuitive. So you're not like wasting time going through like different editors and stuff to make it work. So you have a lot of them are already loaded, FM wavetables, noise, like different types of all sorts of sounds that you can mess around with it before actually trying to come up with your own. But yeah, it's always a nice feature to have. And so over here you have these regular transposing controls, octaves, semitones, and a fine-tune knob if you want to detune your oscillators in a scale less than one semitone. And you have keyboard controller over here. If you have it engaged to 100%, you're going to get let me reset this. You're going to get a pitch variation. If not, if it's in 0%, you're going to be like each key is going to output the same pitch. So I think this is useful for creating drum sounds, kick sounds, like stuff like that. Over here, your shape knob, which basically scrolls through the waveform, and you have this shape knob already wired to be modulated, but some of the modulation, like the modulation sources available here in Europa. And the difference between using this knob rather than using actually the matrix is that this knob, as you can see, pretty much go from 0 to 100, so it's always positive modulation. In the case of a filter, if you want to, this position to be 0% and you want to move like negative 100% or positive, you need to do this with the modulation matrix, not with these controllers over here. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure of it. This one is the a velocity knob that it scales this knob. So pretty much, if you have an envelope controlling this one and you engage velocity, it's going to react to how harder you press the keys. Something like this. Moving on, we have modifiers. We have modifier 1 and modifier 2. These ones are identical. You have pretty much a lot of, I think the analogous for these modifiers are the warp modes in Zero. So if you have previously any experience with Serum, this is going to be like really familiar to you. You're instantly going to visualize what each of these modifiers is doing to the sound. For instance, if you turn this to phase distortion, you're going to, as soon as you increase the amount and you have it engaged, turn on, you're going to see how the waveform changes. And similar to this modulation source that is already engaged to the knob, you have one for each of these modifiers. So you can choose between LFOs, envelopes, velocity, modulation wheel, this random one. I don't have an experience with this one, but yeah, you have pretty much control over all of this. And moving here to the right, we have the spectral filter. And what's cool about this spectral filter is that unlike any traditional filter that processes and filters audio, this one is based on an algorithm. So it's like pretty much it looks like any regular filter, but you can change it, and it's basically an algorithm reconstructing the shape you see over here. So one feature that is really interesting is that if you had a waveform loaded over here, so this one, you can use actually the user wave to turn it as a filter. And using the frequency knob, you can step in a partial of the waveform, and then you can use the actual resonance to have more or less the similar effect that the waveform when you load it in the waveform oscillator. So it's pretty interesting, and in later videos we are going to be covering how you can use all of this. So basically, you have the keyboard controller engaged in the filter, you have a modulation and a velocity knob to actually scale the modulation here. And pretty much, this is the harmonics processor. The harmonics processor is, I encourage you to go to the manual and you read about it, because it's not difficult to explain, and it does exactly what the name suggested. It processes harmonics in your waveform. But if you want to really understand what each of these modes is doing, basically go to the manual, because what I like to do is to start making my sound progressing from this section to the filter, and then if I want to process it a bit more, I basically engage the harmonics mode and I start messing around, moving the position, moving the amount, and seeing what goes best for the sound. So it really messes things up. So you have a lot of sonically, range of things that you can do with just one engine to start with. And to kind of finish here, you have the unison control, and you can go for each engine of up to 7 voices, and you have control of how each voice blends together, detune against each other, and how they spread. So again, if you're not familiar with how these controls works, unison is pretty straightforward. You can pretty much tell how all of this stuff sounds just by messing around with the knobs and seeing and listening to the impact it has on the sounds. But yeah, you have 3 of these engines, so it's really powerful, and each of the 3 are identical. So You can replicate a lot of what you're doing in the other two, and maybe mess around with the detune to create like interesting phase cancellation and stuff like that. Yeah, so I think this is all for this video. It's basically trying to explain the engines, and in other videos we're going to cover this middle section over here, which is basically a mixer. So you have control over the volume of the different engines, panning, and the master filter, which is also straightforward, and the amp section. So yeah, video 2 is going to be this media section over here, and then we are going to leave the modulations, the different envelopes, LFOs, and the modulation matrix and effects for a third video. And after that, we are going to be making sound, so it's not all boring. Yeah, so if you like this, please subscribe and leave a comment, and it's much appreciated. Have a nice day.